Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Convos.dev, where two friends talk about development, life, and everything in between. Today, we want to chat about our experiences with events and conferences. And we're coming fresh off seeing each other not too long ago at an event. So it's certainly the season where they're all happening. I think by the time this comes out, I will have gone to 2 or 3 more events than I have right now, still left. So we met in Seattle for a meetup, like a local meetup by a Seattle JS group. And that was sponsored by both of our companies, Warp and Resend. But we got to hang out and talk to each other and talk to friends and stuff like that. But yeah, why don't you start and tell us about how much you love going to events and conferences?
First of all, I want to say we were both so bad at our jobs that we forgot to get a picture with each other, and we had to chase down the guy with the picture because we forgot to take pictures.
Yeah.
I will say, as somebody who is an introvert and then as somebody who has been working remote for so long, I would like to characterize myself as somebody who is not like great at conferences. I think there was a long time where I thought I would be like bad as a DevRel person, because when you look at the job description of DevRel, a lot of it is like going to conferences and evangelizing and doing talks. And for me, I've always preferred evangelizing through a camera and through content. And I think there was a point where I was like, I can do this. Like I could find a career where I can just do the content and not necessarily go to as many conferences. However, I will say that so Chris pushed me to go to the Seattle JS one, and I would say that was actually a really good experience. And I think there's a lot of differences from like my previous experience, because I went to KubeCon a couple years ago, and that was it wasn't a bad experience. It was just like I felt so out of place there. I didn't know anything about Kubernetes, and I was also there more for like true marketing reasons, and it just felt like it was disingenuous for me to be there. It just felt bad having to promote my product, like promote Warp. Because I will be going to a lot more. I'm going to go to OpenAI Dev Day. I'm going to SF Tech Week, and then Warp is actually hosting its own, hosting its own Dev Day in December, and so I'll be there for that. And I think more and more as I get more secure in my role as DevRel and grow as a content creator, and also build, I'm going to say like a level of expertise in the AI coding area that is very niche, and I can walk into a space and know that I know more than somebody in that specific thing, that imbues me with a lot of confidence, where I feel as if I bring something to a table in a conversation. Not that I would lord it over somebody like I know more than you, but it's more like, oh, okay, at least I think I have something to offer, but let's also just talk as two human beings and like let me get to know you. And I think when I come into it more with that aspect, instead of like, oh, it's my job to be here and I have to sell you this product, it becomes a lot more pleasurable. And you also realize that everyone else does not want to be selling or buying any product. They just want to have fun and get to know other people. And then maybe later connect about tech or work. And that has been a nice shift in my mindset that has helped me like come into some of this with a more positive attitude.
I'm sure I told you about my theory on introverts versus extroverts, because I feel like I can't shut up about it, but it's because I tend to think about myself more as an introvert, like naturally. I've had to be in a lot of roles in the past where I had to be extroverted, so you can kind of put it on. But I think I've learned something, which is that like extroverts typically don't actually like talking to people. They just like the idea of like people. They like the concept of people. They like the activity of people, but they don't actually like people. That's my theory. Of course, all the extroverts don't like that theory, whereas introverts actually like people. And I think like the whole world gets this wrong. Introverts would rather sit at the back of the room and actually have a real conversation with a human being. Like introverts like people, extroverts like the idea of people. There's my hot take for today. But so I really think that that's what most people in tech are more introverted by default. And you'll find people who are super extroverted and really good at drawing a crowd and talking with people, whatever. But most people would rather just sit at the back of the room and talk with somebody. And if you can do that well, you really can do conferences and dev meetups well. You don't have to be a huge personality. You have to show with the few people you talk to that you really genuinely care about them. You want to know who they are. And that also ends up being the best way to sell stuff to people. I just think devs as a whole just have such a low threshold for like straight up marketing. They really would rather talk to somebody, learn to trust somebody, understand that this person gets their pain points, what they care about, and then that ends up over time building trust. Whereas if you just go like hard sell and stuff, like it just, I don't know, it turns everyone off, I think, personally.
Interesting hot take, by the way.
Yeah, I know all the extroverts will hate it, but I think there's some truth to it.
I like the idea, or like what you said of like we're all introverts, but like, or most of like developer community is probably introverted, but I think with our in a corporate setting or for jobs or even outside of it, like for any sort of leadership role you need to take, a lot of the time you have to don a more like extroverted role to do like things like talks or explain or pitch and things like that.
I think a lot of like conferences and meetups, like just know your reason you're going. Obviously, if it's for work, that's one thing, but I'm assuming most people listening to this would probably be more personal. And so, like, you're probably like, to me, it's like either you're going to be inspired and you want to go just to like be inspired, to learn more, to, you know, actually get stuff from the talks, or two, it's mostly to meet people. Like, I don't really like the idea of like networking, but I tend to think about it more as just like, I want to make one or two really good connections while I'm there that I can carry on out of the time. So I think a lot of that comes down to like basic people skills. And I think a lot of times you tend to think I have to say a lot of really smart things. Whereas what I found is like, you just need to ask good questions, and like people love to talk about their thing, even if they're super introverted. Like I was at a conference this summer, and this guy came up who like worked on this super specific piece of software connected to oil rigs. And I'm like, I don't know anything about this. And he was really quiet and kind of shy. And so I just kept asking him questions about oil. Like, how'd you get into this? Like, what are the different parts? Like, I'm sure that sounds really complex. And by the time, I mean, he talked to me for 25 minutes as somebody who clearly was not somebody who liked to talk. And I never said anything aside from asking him questions. And by the end, he was like, that was so fun to talk to you. And I genuinely enjoyed it. Like, it was super interesting. I would never would have known anything about this. And like, people really are fascinating if you just take the time to ask good questions and find what excites them and then dig down into that. And I think a lot of times you tend to think, if they said this, I need to say something similar about my experience. Most of the time, if they said it, ask something about what they already said and go down their rabbit trail instead of mirroring whatever they've said the whole way, because it can kind of come across like one-upping them, or like, I have a better story, or I have a similar story. Like, they really already told you their story, so now dig into that story instead. So I think for me, if you struggle talking or going to conferences, you don't know what to say to people, don't feel like you have to have a lot to say. Just ask a good question and then listen to what they say and ask another question about something they've already said. And you can do that for 20 minutes with anyone, especially if you get them on a topic they really like.
And PSA, this works for dating as well. No, and I would say, like, I know you're not going to consider this your superpower, but I consider it your superpower, is like meeting Chris. Like, Chris's superpower is he doesn't make people feel judged, and he's very inviting. And I'll say it in contrast to kind of me, especially like a couple years ago. I was very insecure as, I'm going to say, like, one, a female, two, not white, three, I'm also very short and I have a young face. And I think it's hard when you are trying to talk to like a lot of, I'm going to say, like, more middle-aged white men. And that's definitely a stereotype, not all true. But it's like, I think when I feel as if I'm in the outside realms of things, I tend to get very defensive. Like, I think that people are judging me, so then therefore I will just immediately like try to sound really smart, or try to be defensive, or try to seem like I'm aloof in some way, so that I just have this like air of like, I don't know, you don't really know me, and so you can't judge me. And again, this just goes into what I said before, is like, as I've gained a little bit more confidence, as I've sunk into my role a little bit more, and et cetera, and confidence not just in my job, just in life in general, I think that defensiveness has gone away a little bit, and now I'm doing a lot more of what Chris is saying, like just being okay with not knowing a lot and asking questions and genuinely being curious and wanting to know people. Who knows what somebody's first impression of me is? I don't know, right? I can never know. But for the most part, like, if I, spend 10 to 15 minutes with that person, I'm hoping that they'll overcome those first impressions and just, get to know me a little bit. And I'd like to think that I'm, like a nice person to get to know. So, yeah.
Well, I think you're a great person to get to know. And that's kind of what you said about me. I think you, like, my first impression of you was like you were smart and gifted. And a lot of it was because of the way you talked. But I think the more I've gotten to know you, like, the people you always connect the most with are people who like genuinely care for you. And you can tell that. And I think the more and more that as a whole devs get better at that, like, that's ultimately what you want at a conference, is you want to leave saying like, that person really cared about me. And I think that's the reason Jess and I are doing this, because over the years, that's the kind of relationship we've been able to have with each other. And so that, I hope that we can continue to grow that kind of spirit in the dev community. And yeah, I think that's a special thing to have.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, so touching. Okay.
I know, right?
You got a lot of stuff here. You want to like talk through any of that?
Yeah, let me mention maybe just a couple short things. I don't think we need to go really deep into them, but I would say as far as like learning from good speakers, you can gain a lot about storytelling from listening to good talks. And there are some people who are technically very gifted, but their talks are more like a bullet list. And so you learn a lot of what not to do too. So really, especially if you're, well, it doesn't matter what you do as a developer. Like, you have to tell stories to pitch stuff internally. Like, here's why I think we should do this route instead of that route. Here's why I think we should, whatever, architect this back in this way. Like, you have to tell a story. And so learn how to tell stories from people. I was going to mention also, like, the parties, like after parties and stuff, are really important because they give you time to actually talk with people. And usually I'm at the back of the room just sitting down talking with somebody. And that's really where I almost always take away from the conference, like, that was the best time. I'm not usually just singing karaoke or doing whatever else. I'm usually just, chatting with somebody. So, and then also, like, I realized I have a social capacity limit. So I will just take breaks. Like at this last one, I went and walked with a friend to the Seattle library and we said nothing for like 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, now I feel great. Let's go back. And it's okay to do that. And then like, you can also gamify meeting people. I think Jess met Christina, who just joined our company. She like made all these friendship bracelets and like literally had people hounding her for friendship bracelets. I'm like, that's such a smart way, because she's like, I don't really want to go up to people, but I want people to come to me. So I was trying to think like, what can I do to get people to come to me so I can give them stuff and talk with them and meet them and that kind of thing. I have like stickers of my own head, which I don't know why anybody would want those, but for my YouTube channel, so I'll have those. I think I've had like 2 people ever come up. I did give one to Jess. I forgot about that. So I will have those, and sometimes people will come up and ask for those.
it's on my Vaseline.
I don't know what to make of that.
I was trying to figure out where to put it.
That's the best news I've heard all day.
Yeah.
So those are a couple more thoughts, but yeah, we could jump into tools now if you want to. I got to recover from the Vaseline sticker.
It's like a huge tub of Vaseline too.
It is a very big. Yeah, what happens when you have to throw it out? Just the sticker goes to. I'll meet you up again by that point.
I'll move the sticker. I'm not gonna finish this for like 2 years, man. Like,
yeah, at least. Yeah, seriously.
Okay. So my tool is Kiro. Have you heard of Kiro, by the way? Yeah.
I have. Is that Amazon's like?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So Kiro is like similar to Cursor, Windsurf. It is a VS Code fork. And the reason why it's interesting to me is Kiro bases its development like UI off of like 3 core principles. It asks you to submit like a spec file before you start, so that essentially it's basically saying like instead of just like jumping in with AI and just doing whatever, we want the developers to really spend time architecting and like writing out their tech stack, their coding preferences, their how they want versioning to work, and a bunch of other things. They have spec, they have, I forget the second thing, but it's like literally like a bunch of rules around, and they want the developer to like put these in before they even ever start coding. So I think it's really interesting because in other ID or like in like Cursor, Windsurf, people will usually start with like a basic prompt, or they might even just start opening up a file using like the really intelligent auto completions. But with Kiro, it's like they want a good amount of time to be sunk into planning and architecting before actually coding. So I think it's really cool that there's this philosophy and that there's even like product value in a VS Code fork with just a slightly different philosophy, which is just really interesting. And people seem to really like Kiro, which is like, again, it's a VS Code fork. It's like crazy that, you could like make money or get people to use something that is, very transparently just a fork of VS Code. But it's just a different philosophy, but it's really cool that people are like buying into it.
I was going to say, it seems like everybody who's done well with Cursor or Windsurf, like essentially has to get to a point where that's what they're doing. Like they have to like, build out CloudMD files. They have to whatever. So like, I like the fact that Kiro is basically saying what we need to do is not train the LLM as much as we need to train the developer on how to use it. And that's so smart.
Yeah, it's really cool. Okay, you have Day One.
Yeah, Day One is a journaling app. So like for instance, let's say you're on a podcast with your friend and you figure out that she like put your sticker on the top of Vaseline. That day you may need to go and like journal about that a little bit. So I'm just using, but I found it really helpful because it will remind you of stuff. Like every year I get a reminder of all the things I've done in the last 8 years of journaling. And so most of my stuff is just either like what I did that day or just raw thoughts and I've done a video before actually, I think for Warp, where like sometimes I'll just speak it into my terminal and you can like actually, use their CLI tool.
Do you still use that workflow?
Not that particular one.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Mostly because I use Super Whisper now.
Yeah.
And so I just use it everywhere. So if I'm going to speak, I'll just open the app and speak directly into it. But I found it really helpful for several things. Like one is just debugging my own thoughts. I'm very much a verbal processor, but nobody wants to listen to me talk that much. So I can talk it out and then kind of capture it. And that helps me think through it. But I've also found it's really helpful with like, especially like, I don't know, people stuff. Like let's say I had a struggle with a friend and I'm just like, here's what happened. And to be able to look at that over time and see like those people change and how I changed towards them and like, oh, that was actually happening at the time. I didn't realize it. And like all these kinds of things are really helpful for me when it comes to reflection. The thing I've always struggled with journaling is actually getting benefit out of it. And Day One surfaces that. So every day I get a list of every time I posted that day, the last 7 or 8 years. It's also really fun with kids because I have pictures and audio of my kids talking at like, 16 months old or whatever. And I just hear them, talking and now they're 7, 9, 5, so anyhow, if you don't do some kind of journaling practice, I found it really helpful to organize your thoughts, and Day One's a great option.
That's really cool, especially like the year look back or 2 years look back type thing. Yeah.
It gives me
That's
like
awesome.
actual benefit without making me do the work. It just shows it to me.
All right, show and tell. What is this Nora sweater thing?
So I was debating whether or not to say this, but so one of the things I do on the side is I like to knit a lot, which I know is not super common, but there's a really good article by a male developer on why more devs should knit. But I knit my daughter a sweater. It's not the first one I've done. If you're not watching on YouTube, sorry. I'm working on my other daughter sweater right now. So this one's partially complete. But I think the reason I like it is it's like tactile. So it's not something on a keyboard. And then also like it's very algorithmic. Like you're like, do 5 of these, then 2 of these, and then 2 of these. And it's also like a good parallel for debugging. Like if you mess up, it's just always worth it to go back and fix it then. Like if you let it go, then there's always this spot that you're like, I messed that section up. So I find it's like helpful for me, even mentally, to like, it gives me something to do and gives me time to think. So usually it's like we're watching a movie or something and I'll be over there knitting like a grandma. But I actually started it because I had a friend who was into it, and I was like, "Oh, let me come over. You can teach it to me." That's how I get into all these hobbies. It's basically a way to connect with people. And so then she taught me how to do it, and then I just kept doing it. I made my wife like a ton of hats. I made her a sweater. I made my son a sweater, then my daughter, now my other daughter. So this is the last sweater to complete the collection. But I found it's like really helpful to have a tactile thing. So that's my show and tell.
It's so annoying how you're good at all of these things. And 2, I learned in college, they push the philosophy of people, like no one is born a natural developer. But when I talk to you, I really feel like you have such a, I'm going to say like in a good way, stereotypical developer mindset, like the way that you have these parallels between like coding and it's it's awesome. Like, it's really cool. Like, I know you didn't have like a conventional, like, CS,
Yeah.
education, but you really are meant to do what you're supposed to be doing. It's kind of crazy.
Well, that's encouraging. Thanks.
Okay, my show and tell is so stupid. Do you do Wordle?
I don't today, but I have before. That is super impressive. Two attempts.
Frizz! I guessed Frizz. And I was so happy with this. It's just, so for people who are not watching the video, if you play Wordle, I guessed my first word as frizz, RFIZZ, and I was like, this is just a stupid guess. And then I got 4 of those letters right, and the actual word was fritz, and I was like, this is the best thing that's happened to me
That's
this week.
such a hard word too. How would you ever get
I
that
know. I'm just so happy with that.
Oh, that's impressive.
Okay. We're a little bit over time, but I'm just going to wrap this up. Thanks, Chris, for having this episode with me. As always, you can always check out our social media, and please send us emails or questions through our YouTube, Twitter, email address, all those things. We are always would love to hear from our audience, honestly. But yeah, thanks, Chris, and I'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.